So now we can move on from turret control to gun control, which, as we saw, is responsible for controlling the vertical part, that is the elevation of the gun assembly itself, and therefore it's attached not to the gun base, but to the empty object that is guns. Fire control will also be there, which we'll look at soon. Maybe even in this same segment, because gun control is so simple. And it's so simple because, as I said before, it's making use of all of this complex calculation in turret control. So whereas the turret control script is a total of 99 lines long, we see that the gun control script not only has many fewer variables it has to declare, but really just has that fixed update, and that's it. So, of course, what's crucial to that is that this script get a reference to the other one. So we're doing the this transform and root transform again, and we're declaring a variable for the turret control script of type turret control. You can always do this. Once that other script has been created, it's now an object that the Unity runtime understands, and so the name is turret script, but the type is turret control. We're going to go ahead and do estimated target position here and updated direction, because we're going to be pulling those from the turret control script. And we'll go ahead and derive my opponent from the script too. I'm keeping it public just, again, along with these ones, so that they're exposed in the inspector again, and I can just make sure at runtime that it's acquiring them as I expected. So with that said, all we need to do, set this transformer, transform, and then this is really the crucial bit here, where we're going to get a handle on that turret control script. Now, how do we do that? We need to sort of think about where they are in relation to each other. So here's the guns, and here's the gun base. Both of these are children of gun structure. So what I have to do is go up to the root of this object, which is that object. And then once I'm at the parent of guns, I can use the get component in children structure and tell it to look for an object called turret control, and it will look until it finds it. And so it finds it in the gun base. And there you go. So then I have to check, before I try to do anything with it, I've got to check to make sure that it's actually there. There hasn't been an error in getting a handle on it. It's always a good idea. And if it's successfully there, then the first thing I do is grab my opponent. I grab the jet from the publicly exposed my opponent. And then my auto aiming is really simple, because I'm using the estimation logic from the turret script. So I'm using its estimated target position, and based on that, then I can go ahead and calculate I could have grabbed update direction, I suppose. No, the reason that I couldn't do that is because I'm not removing the Y from it this time, so I felt it was best to go ahead and do the whole thing now, so that I actually had the full direction in world space and not just the kind of flat two-dimensional version of it. And then I just call the slurp, and this looks just like the slurp function in turret control. Just now we know that updated direction is taking account of the full, three-dimensional world space, and it's moving from where the gun currently is to where it thinks it is. Now, you may say, well, I thought the gun control was only concerned with the up and down, and the turret control was going to handle the side to side. And that's true, and it would have been possible to remove the X and Z components, but this is a complicated thing to deal with, especially if you're not just removing one dimension, but because you really need to do the X, Z, and quaternion has one more dimension as well. And it gets tricky when you're doing that. And what I just discovered through experimentation was that even though this is actually doing all the pointing itself, the horizontal part of that is hidden essentially by the fact that the turret is also doing the horizontal pointing. So if the gun assembly just was hanging there in the space and didn't have a turret associated with it, then of course all the aiming logic would have to be in GunControl. But if it was, then the gun would do all of the pointing itself. It would rotate along all of the axes appropriately and know where to fire. But that would look strange, and so just in keeping with something like real world physics, we're keeping those looking separate. But that's it. This is enough to tell the actual guns where to aim. Again, not exactly at the jet, but at where we think the jet is going to be by the time our shell gets there. So that takes care of both turret control and gun control.